Hi everyone, it is Dion Liu here from Zoetic Agency. I was just thinking what my name might be there.
And we can call you whatever we want. Want to call you as well. Yeah, I know.
Call me what you want. And today this is Trevor Young, my partner at Zoetic, and with us is Craig McDonald, the CEO of MailGuard. And Craig's with us today. We're going to be talking about what we call New Thought Leadership and how Craig has essentially used content and social media to build a cyber security brand. So welcome to Facebook Live, Craig, and to the New Thought Leader podcast, because this is being done simultaneously.
We are doing them both. We're knocking up a second podcast, and the difference between PR Leads, our previous one, that's really aimed and around, probably a bit more around senior PR and communications professionals and people who are in that space. But the New Thought Leader podcast, which this one is we do a lot of work with, let's call it executive branding, thought leadership marketing strategies, dealing with people who are very smart, got a lot of expertise, and just want to get out into the marketplace a bit more and educate and share and provoke thought and build community and bring people along for the journey around whatever that their chosen topic is. And Craig, great to have you first cab off the rank, my friend.
Oh, thank you.
And you know, we'll go through Craig's story. Well, he'll go through his story. But there's some really great learnings. We've known Craig for a little while. Some great learnings around what he's doing. He's just written a book, which we'll get into. And also just the things that he's doing that really have raised his profile of himself personally and professionally, but also that of his business, MailGuard. So Craig, why don't you just tell us a little bit about what MailGuard does and is, because it's a growing company, and then we can kick off into the social media and the content marketing side of things.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thanks again, guys, for inviting me along, and honoured to be number one on the cast, so thank you for that.
Pleasure.
Look, I suppose in lay terms, we are a cybersecurity company. We have a email and web security platform to prevent criminal intent from entering into the workplace for our business customers. We're in 27 countries. We've just clocked over 16 years, so we started in 2001, so it's been going quite some time. I'm a non-IT person, which is a bit unusual, having such an interesting company. And it's actually now recognised as the largest private group in the world in our space, and we're leading the category in identifying threats around about 2 to 48 hours ahead of our major competitors, which are quite large global groups like a Semantic, as an example, which most people have heard of. So really cool. Look, the journey's been interesting with MailGuard. Obviously, we've written all of our intellectual property for our coding. We've got really smart guys that work for me, and we're based in Melbourne, Australia. Most of all our work's being done out of the one office that we're currently still in. But all the IP and R&D is being done out of Australia, which is great. So we're giving back into the research around cybersecurity here locally. That on its own path is growing with the local universities, whether it's Melbourne University or others that we're working with to take the company to the next level. But it's self-funded, so we don't have any capital or VC funding. So it's all been hard yards, but it's been paying off, particularly this last couple of years, and for very good reasons, and that is that cybercrime's gone through the roof.
Yes.
It's in the last 2 years. It's a
growth industry, that's
for
sure.
It's definitely where some good easy money's out at the moment. Probably go to jail if you get caught, so it's not a good industry from that perspective. But it's had a 300% increase in the last 24 months globally, and we're seeing that here locally in Australia as well.
Why is that, Craig? I mean, I saw an article you posted on Twitter just last night when I was thinking about our time together this morning, and it said, and it didn't surprise me, that only 1% of companies would say that they were very confident about dealing with cybersecurity. So why are we at this point? What's happened? Why is the growth so rapid?
Yeah, look, there's been a big change as to the way criminals, hackers are approaching obtaining ultimately money. That's the ultimate aim here. It used to be around disruption, but it's moved definitely into the financial area of how much money can I make out of either a little bit of information that I have, Or can I maybe do something that's called ransomware, which is basically asking someone to pay a lot of money to get some keys back to unlock some files if encrypted. So that's been quite an interesting journey. But what's happened in the last 2 years of the change is that they've realised that our systems are being more aligned, our PCs, our Macs and all the rest of it. There's been a lot of technology work on trying to prevent hacks from occurring.
Yes.
And so they've done a really good job on that front in protecting that platform. But they realised that the simplest and easiest way to obtain information was through us as humans.
Yes.
So that was the weakest link, because you've got staff who, I'm a non-IT person, I can break things quite easily.
Yeah.
And you've got those that don't realise that by actioning an email that they have in front of them can actually cause either personal or company harm in one click.
So there's a whole education piece there, which is about the human being.
Yeah.
I know when I first met you, one of the things that we talked about quite a number of years ago was how, in the first instance, you had built MailGuard into 27 countries, and obviously cybersecurity, I know, was always an interest for you. And what I thought was really interesting and So what was your approach, and how did it work, and how did it help, I guess, to cement MailGuard's global presence?
Yeah, no, it's it is quite interesting, because when we first started, there wasn't anyone really playing in our space in the way that we were approaching the market through having systems in the cloud, so versus having it on the desktop or as a server in the server room. So when we went to market, we were up against the giants and their big marketing dollars.
Yes.
So we were really up against it. We had no money to go and spend on marketing. So it was like, well, okay, how do we go about this? So there was a lot of referral, a lot of lead work, going out and meeting people, and we still have an amazing referral from our existing customer base and equally our partners, which we've got around the world now. But back in the day, we started realising that the money that our competitors were spending was in the millions, and there was just no way we were going to play on that platform. Yeah. And equally, the message we were still crafting around why we were actually having a better impact on protecting customers. It was easy to say, but trying to put that into a way that IT people would feel comfortable, approaching a new startup company in a new sector. Cloud wasn't even called cloud 16 years ago.
What was it called?
Oh God, it was ASP, so it was all these weird acronyms, and it was like, how do we explain it to somebody? So we kind of just left that alone and just said, look, we're approaching it differently. We didn't even start talking about where our systems were. We just started like chit-chat. And it still was a long road, so it was more around our first clients that we had in the first weeks that we opened was Porsche and AFL, Royal College of Surgeons, and the Victorian Collective 3 Zoos. And we just really helped that relationship along by asking them to help us keep designing and better improving our systems, but in return, can we get introduced to your suppliers and contacts? And that's kind of where it went from. So we started then thinking about how else do we then move that along. And then several years later, obviously LinkedIn emerged, and it was kind of like, well, what's this thing? Are we going to use this thing? A lot of people using it, particularly here in Australia. So quite early.
You were you were a really early adopter.
Yeah, those days when you'd ask someone to invite them to connect with you, and they think that you were stalking them.
Absolutely. Well, that still happens today, but it's quite interesting. But when you were, it's like, well, I'm not sure who you are, so I'm not going to accept your connect request, was the common response. It's like, but that's what the platform's designed to do. You need to be able to meet up with these people and have great conversations with them.
I mean, surprisingly, that's still a concern. LinkedIn was actually founded in 2002, so it's 15 years old. But, often that's one of the questions that we get asked is, is it okay to accept an invite from somebody I don't know personally?
Yeah.
So it's a real concern.
So how, Craig, then what was your approach to LinkedIn then, and how have you seen it changed, and what sort of benefit has it had on your profile and therefore your business through the connections you've made?
Yeah. Well, look, I think in the early days it was quite tough, to be honest, around identifying who was actually online. It was quite resume driven, So it was very hard to really pick out where we were going to have a conversation, not hire someone. So sort of fast forwarding even to from 2002 into maybe around 09, 2010, somewhere around then, there was a real big change that was happening around the way that I approached LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And particularly around communicating to those that I was connected with. Because obviously a lot of those were businesses that were prospects of mine at the time, and started producing content that I wanted to talk about this topic and getting their interest and awareness around our industry, whether it was IT person or a senior level of executive. And so that's sort of where it began.
Yes.
That time period ago, so about 6 years ago. And then from there, it just kept progressing. A lot of people following the articles I was writing, a lot of commentary was coming back.
So you were using, was the LinkedIn blog platform in place then, or were you using that to drive people to the MailGuard blog? MailGuard blog. Yes.
Yeah, so it was quite early for that. And obviously the blog for LinkedIn came along a little later.
Yeah.
I'm not sure exact time frames.
But obviously from a content point of view, you'd already thought about the value of creating and having a corporate blog.
Yep.
And sharing that sort of information with a wider audience.
Absolutely.
So when did you start blogging?
It was, I don't know the exact date, but it was probably towards the end of 09 was really the starting point of getting information. And the reason for that was that we had a lot of information that we wanted to share, but obviously, having meetings for 30 minutes or an hour may not have been enough time for us to get that intel across. But equally, we had 6 products that we wanted to talk about, and why you needed to integrate all of those together in some way. So that's quite a bit of a chunk of information. Sending a proposal was never going to work in regards to, hey, by the way, I know you asked about this, but here's 5 others I need you to look at. That's distraction. So it was more around how do we leave something behind, or how do we get them to read, and that's sort of the start of that nurture. We were even early adopters in Salesforce here for Australia, so the CRM system. So a lot of those that I was connecting with, I was then taking out obviously their email address and then sending them content at that point, at that early stage. So that was probably a little earlier on that front, and then we obviously made it more of a landing page to bring people in. So once they saw one bit of content, they could click through and maybe read something else.
And so you were doing Twitter at this stage, or Twitter came a bit later?
No, much later.
Much later.
Yeah.
And how you found Twitter, both for the company, but also, again, for you personally? I know you're pretty active on it now.
Yep.
How did you find getting into Twitter? Did you go kicking and screaming, or
I'm kind of still there. Kind of still there, kicking and screaming.
But you've got a following. You're active on it.
Yes.
I mean, corporately you are as well. But we're great believers that business leaders and CEOs and founders should be on in their own guise.
Yes.
Which you are.
Which you are, and then the company has its own branded account.
Yep.
Do you find with Twitter, we think it's all about, reach is great, but it's about influence and reaching the right people, being part of the right conversations, making those connections, with people who are your peers and other thought leaders in your space around the world, who in all likelihood you wouldn't have got to meet in real life potentially. So it's a good way to connect to those people.
Absolutely.
How are you finding all of those things, and is there any sort of Twitter stories that it's really worked for you in terms around, I guess, serendipity and how it's connected you in? I know you've done a lot, and you can feel free to bounce back between LinkedIn as well, because I know you've also won business through LinkedIn too, haven't you?
Yeah, well, I think Twitter for me, I'm still kicking and screaming. So, it's
What's holding you back on it?
Well, I've got 2 young boys under 3. Just written a book in case you want to realise that. And look, it's actually about time, to be honest. It's really around where do I spend my time and energy. And Twitter's a great platform. It's immediate, and you can get an immediate response. Whereas LinkedIn, generally, because we talked about timing of when people were reading articles and responding back to me. And it's amazing that I can have a conversation with someone at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, because obviously I'm up with my 1-year-old. And it's quite interesting, but that's LinkedIn generally. I don't have that type of response back on a Twitter.
Yes.
Interesting for me personally. But from the LinkedIn perspective, from the growth of obtaining business, for me, and I do know others as well that have guided along on how to build their profiles and engage. We're in 27 countries because of LinkedIn.
Wow.
And
You're in 27 countries because of LinkedIn.
Well, tell
Absolutely.
us that backstory, because that is...
Okay. Look, it's one of those things.
There's a headline, sorry.
It's a headline. It's not fantastic. Well, that's your game, which is good. Look, it's if you've got a purpose and you've got something of interest that you believe that someone should be either having a chat to you or using services or product, whatever that is.
Yep.
Identifying now on and LinkedIn's even more easier, even though they keep changing the platform, which is annoying. But you just got to put that aside.
The new normal, yeah.
Today's the new normal. You say, what was that one? So yeah, it's a constant change. But I think the way that LinkedIn's worked for me, and it still does today, is that I can start to search for people who I think are going to benefit from my services. And that's even more so over now with the book that's been launched, which is The Rise of Cybercrime for non-IT executives. But it's really for everyone. It's not just for non-IT people at the executive level. But the cool thing is that I can go and find someone or a business, do some homework, find out the individuals that are the decision makers that I can see online. And I can start dialogue with them. I can either reach out and try and get a connection with them. I can use the in-mail. Hey, participate, or can I do this, or can you read this for me? There's a raft of ways that I tackle depending on who the person or the business is and in what region. And the great thing about the region for the 27 countries is that I can start to build a bit of a beachhead on building up smaller clients or mid-sized clients in particular verticals and concentrate on that area. And see if somebody's active. And I genuinely use this. If someone's only got less than, I call it 300 connections.
Yes.
I kind of know personally that they're not active on LinkedIn. Unless they've got some articles and they're being very particular around who they're connected with. But generally those two things don't go in line
together.
They don't have a high profile of interaction of writing articles and a low connection rate that just doesn't go together.
I agree.
So I generally, even though I may want to send an email to somebody that has less than 300, because that's the one person I need to have a chat with, that response rate or time is delayed. Generally, those who are quite active, it's in the immediate, as I said before, it could be 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning, they're on me at the same time. So it's so picking out different regions to go into or different partners, it's a great way for us to see who's the right group to engage with, and it's literally within hours I can have dialogue happening, depending on time zones.
Somebody in another country,
and we're doing that at the moment with the book, is looking at, well, how do we reach out to new regions and what does that look like? Who do we need to be involved? What associations do we maybe want to get involved with to get the book out to their members and clients?
So I mean, LinkedIn, you're talking about there the search function, and that is one of the amazing things about LinkedIn. It has a very advanced search capabilities. You can track people down by interest, by country, etc. But one of the things that was also really important for you there was understanding the kind of content that people would be receptive to. Making sure that was on both the MailGuard and later the LinkedIn blog. So that, in a sense, Craig, that was a bit of a calling card for you. So that when people went looking for you, they were able to see that you walked your talk, that you knew what you were talking about, that you were a legitimate business. That's probably one of the things that we're constantly saying to people, and in particular to leaders like yourself, but to anyone who has both expertise and point of view.
Content is validation.
Content is validation. So it's not just, do I publish a post and get 3,000 views? It's about having come to somebody's attention. How do you then prove to them that you are who you say you are and do what you say that you do? And LinkedIn is very powerful for that.
Absolutely,
I think let's move on to the book, because I think, again, the book is still content marketing. It's albeit very long-form content. Why did you come up with the idea of the book, or why did you do the book, and how is it helping you? And I know that we talk a lot, Dion and I talk a lot about owned, earned and social media and how they all connect up, and you've shown how owned, social and content do connect and blend very nicely, but earned media, then I'll get you to tell the story about how it got you into the Wall Street Journal. So let's look at the book. Why did you write it?
Well, it's been about a 2.5 year thought of how I'd really like to get a book out, but thinking it and doing it are very, 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 very different. And equally, what type of book was I going to produce around this topic that I talk about? And you talked about the blog articles and things, a lot of storytelling, which I'm bringing as long as we've still got the message around what's happening in the marketplace. So a lot of storytelling around there. Try and keep it non-technical. And so the book in the last 2 years came about from presenting at different board levels, and the type of questions that were being asked of me at the time. I soon realised that I had more to say to the questions that I was being asked, but I didn't have a longer time session to present.
With the boards, yes.
Yeah, so I was getting not necessarily shorter time, but by the time all the questions came to me, there wasn't much left at the end of the day to talk or present through the answers. So our pitch deck or presentation decks were starting to sharpen around those messages, and I've got a great team at MailGuard that's helped a lot with all the content for the company, and we're a bit fortunate now. We didn't have that 2 years ago.
Yeah.
We do now.
Yeah.
And they're flat out. We could have probably another 10 people doing this background work for me. But at the end of the day, the book came around of same questions being asked. Why is this happening to me? Why am I being targeted by criminals? And what does it mean? And what's this and what's that? Why is this not working? And so the book's not heavy word based. It's more around content that's easily digestible in 60 minutes or less. It's around graphical representation of what's happening. So, for instance, 91 email threat arrives via email. So we're trying to do a bit of stat-driven. A lot of quotes from global executives and presidents and prime ministers talking about the actual topic to validate that this is actually a global issue. So it's not me saying it. So again, I'm looking out to the market of what's being said already.
So there was a deliberate strategy on your
Correct.
part to,
Absolutely. And again, as I mentioned earlier, around our competitors having unlimited marketing budgets, we're up against groups in our space now who they've got $200 million. They're on the stock exchange and they're spending lots in marketing and sales driven. So I still don't have that bucket of money to throw it at. So I have to think differently around the strategy of presenting myself and the company into that area. So that's where the book sort of came in. How do I put my thoughts out about what I'm being asked? Who's saying the same things that I'm saying that are valid people and roles? And it's been really well received. It's had massive downloads already from Amazon. It's obviously had great endorsements. Wall Street was interesting. I went to a function for Rob Sloan, who made the comment about the book. It's one of the most balanced books he's read on the topic, and congratulated me on that. But how that came about...
he is the journalist at the Wall Street Journal.
He's the cybersecurity research director at the Wall Street Journal. So,
if you don't mind.
Yeah, if you don't mind. So it was really quite... I went to an event, didn't realise he was actually going to be at this particular event I went to, and I said, "Hey, I've written a book. Can I give you a copy of the book and let me know your thoughts about it?" And pretty well, he's emailed back to me because he got on a plane thereafter and flew back to his homeland. He said, "I wrote the email on the plane and hit send as soon as I had connection. I wanted to tell you straight away what I thought of the book." And so he just gave me a really great wrap of the book, as I said, about being balanced on the topic, because it's either really heavily driven around the product of the company.
Let's show how we can hack you now and quickly.
And I want to sell you something. And equally, it's more word driven than anything else. And there's a lot on the market around that.
But what I love about what you're telling us about it is, you've been in front of these boards and these executives. You know what they're asking. So the book itself, the content is being led by the very real questions and answers that people at that level need. And what I love about that is that is in effect a user generated, in a sense, a book, because you're not sort of pontificating about MailGuard or anything like that. It's about understanding there's a need. People have lots of questions. They need credible answers. And that ticks the box in terms of content that does cut through, because we know that, people are overwhelmed. There are 27 million pieces of content a day or something crazy going around the internet.
Always got to get a stat out.
Got to get a stat out, one for today. But we know, and we've seen it time and again, that if it's useful and it's helpful,
Yep.
people will digest it, whether they're a journalist, a board member,
Yep.
just somebody who's, actively interested in the area.
Absolutely.
I think the other key there is there's a couple of things. One is, and we talk about it a lot, Dion, is repurposing content.
Yes.
So you're repurposing your slide decks, your
Correct.
presentations, and that are being honed again and again and again. You're taking that and turning it into a book. The book, as you say, is designed to be read in an hour by non-technical people, so you know your audience, which is what we always talk about as well. Can you read it on the plane between Melbourne and Sydney? Yeah, well, obviously you can. But it also, it's not just words, but you've got stats and graphs and stuff like that. So it's not super long. I did ask you how many words, and I don't think I got an answer, but that's okay. But you said it can be read in an hour. But that's the thing, is a lot of people think a book is something quite heavy and thick, and it doesn't need to be, because a lot of people now, they're time poor. So if you can get in and out of the topic, you don't have to fluff it up, just to reach an X amount of words, because that's what it's traditionally been done. So it's a book, and in this case does not matter. And so the other thing that's there is that added credibility. So you've got, a prominent writer for Wall Street Journal who was picked up on it. Now, if you didn't have a book, he might have you on his list to watch, and maybe check out your blogs every now and then. He might connect you on LinkedIn or Twitter, and you might get coverage of it. But the fact you've had a book, you've earned the right for that to happen. So that's earned media.
Yeah.
It takes time and effort to do a book. That's why most people don't do it. And you're earning the right for people to talk about you, download it, share it, engage you to speak at a conference, do a review of it, all of those things. So congratulations on that, because it just shows that, and out of all that content, you can now take that content and repurpose it across all your other channels if you haven't already done so. So, it's the gift that keeps on giving. And I guess the other part is, yes, you're answering people's questions and you're doing that more utility-based content, but you're also looking at trends and where things are going, and you've been documenting this for years. Because, as you say, it's been changing again and again. So you can take people along the journey and give them a glimpse of what's actually occurring out there in real time.
Correct. Yeah. And again, I think, and you probably already discovered this, Craig, with books, it's not about sales. It's not about, that one precious dollar you're getting for every book that you sell or whatever it is. It's, again, just about, it's the new business card. It's a way of saying, I can walk my talk on this stuff. And we're really big fans of that, the content being the sort of consolidation of years and years of expertise in ways that's helpful, and also carves out a position for you in the market. So,
I must say too, we neglected to say it was launched at Parliament House.
Yes.
In Canberra, in Australia, and a minister for cybersecurity. So the government take it so seriously, they have a minister for that particular area, and obviously that gives you weight, because then the people that go, because the minister's launching it, it's at Parliament House, that gives it added credibility. So, it's obviously you've got influence in the marketplace that you've built up through social content and now the book. So all of those things work, and they all work on top of each other, don't they?
They do. They reinforce one another. So,
just one question, Craig, just to finish off. Can you tell us, if others are, say they're a founder of a company or a CEO and a business leader or a leader in their community, how do you suggest that, if they want to raise their profile, it's not just about the products and services, there's obviously always going to be, as you've shown us, you don't go out and bang on about your products, but you're inextricably linked to your business, obviously. Right. Yeah. And so whenever you're out talking, presenting, people are reading your stuff, they see you on Twitter and LinkedIn, etc., that comes back to the business. But anyone on this path, this let's call it a thought leadership or more of a knowledge leadership path, and put themselves out there when they're probably not used to doing that as much. Yep. What are some tips around the general things that you've been doing, social content, the power of blogging, LinkedIn, etc.?
Yep, I think just at the very beginning of it, if they're going to go down this path, they've got to be passionate about what they're doing. So that's got to come through in the way that they're presenting themselves. So I think knowing their topic and wanting to make sure that they want to do storytelling around it, so not throwing it in people's faces, which a lot of the content that I see is doing the opposite of what they should be doing.
Yes.
So I think having that passion and drive, and then picking the vehicle for their own personal quest or the business's quest. So LinkedIn is mine, not so much Twitter, although I am using that. They've got to pick which one's working for them that they're able to contribute back into.
And that's okay. It's okay to narrow down and focus. Absolutely.
And they may not know. They may like LinkedIn, but they're better off doing other social platforms. So I think the general rule for me is making sure they're putting enough time and effort into it. Or getting someone to help contribute for them to put things forward. They may not be awesome writers or spelling or grammar, whatever it doesn't matter what it is. There are enough people out there like yourselves that can help get that foot started. And so my recommendation is really live and breathe what you want to talk about, because once that happens, it actually does start to flow naturally. It's that whole crawling, walking, running type scenario. And sometimes you don't need to reinvent the wheel. Looking back at the stuff that's already been talked about, presentations or conversations you've had.
Communicating it.
And then saying, actually, I want to put that out and I can repurpose that later on. And that's really where it starts. Because a lot of people do have things they want to say and do, but they don't communicate it out to different platforms.
And it's an abundance mindset, really, that I'm out here to share this. And by sharing it, I'm igniting conversation, maybe sparking debate, giving people a reason to connect with me and to chat further about this topic. So all of these are things that they're common themes that we do on. Okay, well, thanks very much. It's been Facebook Live. This will now be going up as a new podcast in the next couple of weeks called the New Thought Leader Podcast. And it's been our pleasure to speak with Craig McDonald from MailGuard.
Well, pleasure. Thanks, guys.
Thanks
very much.
Thanks. Nice to see you again.
Bye-bye.